Coming up on Rhetorically Defective.
For Greater New York, good to have you with us tonight, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So,
if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it, all right? And I could be speaking figuratively.
Okay.
I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation.
Imagine if Trump called for violence and when asked about it, he said,
if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it. I could be speaking figuratively. I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation.
Through broad, provocative messaging. 682,000 views on X. I'm so fucking angry, man. A fucking child. Well, it's definitely provocative messaging, and he looks like a broad. Let me bring you through a small autistic journey into the world of stochastic terrorism.
And it's this thing called stochastic terrorism. What stochastic terrorism refers to are public speech acts by prominent figures which are deliberately designed to inflame tensions.
There's obviously a lot of talk about the idea of stochastic terrorism.
Libs of TikTok, Fox News, The Daily Wire, they all know what they're doing. It's stochastic terrorism, and they make a lot of money doing it.
Could stochastic terrorism ever be prosecuted as a crime if you could prove why an individual committed a certain crime, if it was based on what they saw on TV, said by a particular journalist or pundit?
Well, it seems like it's a crime levied at whoever they want to call right wing. You might be wondering what the definition of stochastic terrorism is. I don't care. These people can't be trusted to define racism or woman. You think you're getting a coherent definition out of stochastic terrorism? What matters is actions and how they use the term. It feels familiar though, doesn't it? It's a way of associating you with something without calling you it, because they're massive pussies. Nazi adjacent, rape apologist, white nationalist sympathizer, stochastic terrorist. But let's hear what it sounds like when you're on the receiving end of it.
Scientific American, the formerly reputable scientific magazine, had this article that tried to tie this hammer attack to me, to yours truly. The basic idea, stochastic terrorism, means that if there is a climate of public opinion, if there's a storyline on Fox News or storyline on talk radio, and then there is an incident of violence, if that violence occurs, you can trace the blame back to the media, back to the journalists, back to the reporters, back to the activists. And of course, this doesn't go both ways. It's only applied rightward. And I think the conservative argument has to be aggressive on this. And sometimes you get pushed back because you're getting these outrageous attacks. We have to push forward very strong on this, because we have to say that this is an illegitimate technique.
Here's where I disagree. The term is completely valid, almost exclusively when applied to the left. Like Viva Frey says, confession through projection. Accuse your enemy of doing what you're doing so as to create confusion. Repeat a lie often enough and eventually people will believe it. They accuse you of stochastic terrorism so they can get away with it on steroids. We're so caught up in defending ourselves from their accusations that we're not focusing on their egregious examples of it. They were able to riot for over a year, cause billions of dollars in damage, and light police stations on fire.
And it's this thing called stochastic terrorism. What stochastic terrorism refers to are public speech acts by prominent figures which are deliberately designed to inflame tensions.
the head of Black Lives Matter for Greater New York, good to have you with us tonight, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So watched you talking on a bunch of different interviews today, and you said, burn it down. You said, burn it down. It's time. So that makes me think that you want to burn it down.
I said, if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it. All right, and I could be speaking figuratively.
Okay.
I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation.
Imagine if Trump called for violence and when asked about it, he said,
if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it. I could be speaking figuratively. I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation.
So there's a behemoth of a paradoxical double standard here with the application of the term stochastic terrorism. They use it as a political weapon against you. It's the same pathology of a significant other being suspicious of you cheating because they're cheating themselves, and you're more preoccupied with proving that you're not cheating instead of being suspicious of them cheating. So what you should do is what the woman behind Libs of TikTok did, and put a mirror to their faces. Yahoo News. Libs of TikTok creator accuses NPC News of stochastic terrorism after bomb threat investigation. Known for her far-right extremist anti-LGBTQ+ Libs of TikTok account, Chaya Raichik turned to X, accusing NPC News of trying to incriminate her unjustly and labeling them as the real threats to public safety. Incriminate her unjustly? You mean like calling her account far-right extremist anti-LGBTQ+? Do you think she might have a problem with that? Does that really sound fair? The NPC News piece explored connections between Raichik's online activities, particularly her critiques of LGBTQ+ people in content. Oh my god, her critiques? Can you believe that she critiqued them? And subsequent threats to various institutions. I can't believe she would critique that community. Hey, remember this picture right here? What you didn't see was the text at the bottom that says Chaya Raichik interviews Libs of TikTok creator Stochastic Terrorist hate account owner. Oh, I wonder why she's peeved. This has led security experts to describe her influence as a form of stochastic terrorism, a tactic identified for its capacity to incite random acts of violence through broad, provocative messaging. 682,000 views on X. Chaya Raichik targeted that child's school district in 2022 and got a queer teacher fired. A month ago, the superintendent put her on the state's Department of Education. Today, that child is dead, and Chaya's waltzing around Los Angeles. I'm so fucking angry, man. A fucking child. Well, it's definitely provocative messaging, and he looks like a broad. Chaya chimes in. They keep saying exactly what they mean. They want me murdered for exposing the sexualization of kids. Isn't this stochastic terrorism? Let me give you a brief overview of what happened to cause roaches of leftists to swarm around Chaya. A non-binary, which makes her a trans student, was allegedly beaten up in a bathroom, went home, and died the next day. Since Chaya tweeted something about the school district 2 long years ago, they're using very provocative messaging to make her accountable for the death of this girl who was apparently victimized by the bathroom bill they passed in which she's a girl and was beaten up in the girl's bathroom. If that sounds peculiar, let me show you a biker Santa Claus looking ass man telling you on TikTok.
This is Nex Benedict. They were a non-binary 16-year-old child in Osceola, Oklahoma.
Okay.
On February 7th, they were involved in an altercation in a girl's bathroom where they got into a fight, or some might say were jumped by 3 older teenage girls who beat them severely in a beating that resulted in their head hitting the ground.
That's
Next
unfortunate.
day, they collapsed in their living room.
Empathetic man.
And never regained consciousness.
Okay.
Later being pronounced dead. This is a tragic and senseless loss of life.
Sure.
It is every parent's worst nightmare, and as bad as it is, it is just the tip of the iceberg. First, Libs of TikTok, which is run by Chaya Raichik. They have a massive following.
Oh, a kid dies, and now we're talking about Chaya. Let's count the hoops we have to jump through to make this connection to how she caused the death of a trans child.
What started out as just an account that made fun of liberals on the internet quickly shifted to targeting members of the LGBTQ+ community, especially adults, in education and labeling them groomers, pushing the narrative that they groom children and are dangerous. 2 years ago, in posts that have now been deleted, they targeted an Osceola, Oklahoma teacher for making a video where he told students, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, I guess I'll be your parent. I'll accept you. They accused him of being a groomer.
What grooming is the process by which a sexual predator gains the trust of a child in order to start a sexual relationship with a child in secret. The third stage is becoming important to the child and giving them something that they need. This could be through manipulation, by telling the person that they're the only one that understands them and they're the only one that can help them.
Like, for example, you'll be their parent.
They'll try to give them something or become so important and necessary in this person's life that they feel like they can't live without them or that they need to keep them around.
For example, replacing the parent in the child's life.
The fourth stage is they will begin isolating you. You're with them and you're more vulnerable in those positions.
Like, for example, if you were a teacher and you said to a child,
where he told students, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, I guess I'll be your parent. I'll accept you.
The fifth stage is they'll begin creating secrecy around the relationship. This could be anything from no one would understand what you're going through.
Like, for example, your parents don't understand that you're born in the wrong body. I understand that you're born in the wrong body.
Now, Chaya would and has argued that a post from 2 years ago that has been deleted could in no way contribute to this assault and death. However, Nex's mother stated that Nex knew that teacher and was very upset at losing that teacher. But setting that aside...
Yeah, we should set that aside, because it has nothing to do with her death. There is no correlation there. You're exploiting a dead trans body to further a political narrative, to direct hate, through stochastic terrorism, to Chaya.
That post started a movement in Oklahoma. A movement that was championed by State Superintendent Ryan Waters.
Yeah, like how Black Lives Matter was a movement that was decentralized, and so nobody could be held accountable because it was just a movement? Okay.
Why do I think they're in any way involved in this? Well, because Ryan Walters involved them in it. Earlier this year, he asked Chaya Raichik, founder and runner of Libs of TikTok, to be on his Education Library Media Advisory Committee. To be clear, she lives in California, not Oklahoma.
Uh-oh, she crossed state lines.
And despite the fact that law enforcement states there have been multiple bomb threats to schools.
Bomb threats.
I think you all probably know who Tim Pool is, but there's a lot of people that hate him. They hate him so much that they have called the cops on him and gotten him swatted 9 times in his studio while his show is going on.
Tim Pool was saying, oh, no, I did a documentary about police abuse of black people. But you know, it's really George Floyd's fault, and Derek Chauvin's kind of a hero, and so is Kyle Rittenhouse, and so are all these terribly racist people that went, you get it, right? And that's his whole shtick. Anytime you tune in, white supremacists are great and they're misunderstood and etc. And he'll say, oh, that's hyperbolic. No, I don't say white supremacists are great. I just show you all these different instances of when they were misunderstood and victims.
So why did I show you Brett Cooper talking about Tim Pool getting swatted in June of 2022 and then show you what Cenk Uygur said about him in December of 2021? Well, because Tim Pool was swatted 9 times since January of 2022, which means less than a month after Cenk said that, Tim Pool was swatted 9 times in 6 months.
And when I said 9 times, I didn't mean, like 9 times in all the years that he's been doing the show. 9 times since January. And it is commonly called a criminal harassment tactic. So that is what has happened to Tim Pool and his team 9 times since January.
Notice how she called it a criminal harassment tactic? It's because the right's too moral. They're like, well, I don't want to call it terrorism. Let's see, you know what? You remember when I said, what's the point of looking up the definition? Well, I looked up the definition. I looked up all the definitions. And let's take the most comprehensive definition of stochastic terrorism and see how it applies probably a little more to the left than it does with the right. Although stochastic terrorism is considered an academic term, without a formal legal definition, it is differentiated from other forms of terrorism due to its public, indirect, and seemingly random nature. Number 1. Speech. A public figure or group disseminates violent, inflammatory rhetoric via mass media, directed at people or groups of people, sometimes suggesting or legitimizing the use of violence. This speech tends to be protected due to the use of ambiguous coded language. So Chris Rufo was right when he says,
and of course, this doesn't go both ways. It's only applied rightward.
So if Chaya is showing what these queer teachers are saying to these kids, they can say she's using ambiguous coded language. Dog whistles. Even though she's telling the truth and showing the truth, they can say she's dog whistling. Jokes. If she makes a joke, they can tell you what it really means. Hints. They can say that she's hinting at something. And other subtext in statements. No matter what she says, no matter what someone on the right says, they can call it stochastic terrorism because they can just say that there's subtext in your statements. This academic term is specifically designed to attack the opposing political party, and whatever they say that's truthful, this is how they can gaslight you into thinking that they're saying something that they're not saying. They can tell you what the right really means when they're just saying the truth. Isn't it weird how they don't include, I don't know, lies or misleading people? Wouldn't you think it would involve lying? Nope, that's not in the definition. So when they're lying, they're not being stochastic terrorists. Other themes include black and white, that's funny, good versus evil narratives, you mean like how the Republicans are fascists, as well as painting an enemy as a mortal threat. You mean how like Trump is a fascist, the Republicans are fascists, it's gonna be a dictatorship, they want to genocide trans people, they want to take away black people's right to vote. Like that sounds like a mortal threat, and like you kinda have to do something about it. Do you think that they're going to allow a fascist dictator to be elected president? Do you think they're not gonna mess with the election at all whatsoever? Then they're just gonna let Hitler reincarnated democratically take over the country and take everyone's rights away? Which have been compared to the radicalization techniques used by terrorist groups. These attacks are often repeated and amplified inside of a media echo chamber. Ha! Number 2, speakers. Typically, the speaker is an influential political or media figure. Oh, so it's not a bunch of different speakers. It's not a bunch of activists. It's just one person that you can single out, like Chaya, Chris Rufo, Tucker Carlson. Okay, so this is within their definition. It's one person that's responsible for it, not a collection of people that are putting out this violent rhetoric. Who is referred to as the stochastic terrorist for his or her alleged indirect culpability for the attack. Alleged indirect culpability. Yeah, you really can't prosecute that. So since you can't prosecute it within the confines of the law, let's make up an academic term to polarize our political opposition. The instigators, or stochastic terrorists, may or may not knowingly use this technique to attack and intimidate enemies. Nonetheless, the effect remains the same. So even if we're doing implicit bias right now, even if you're not aware that you're doing it, you can be doing it, which should be true of them as well. Even if they're not aware that they're being stochastic terrorists, the end result is the same. The public figure can plausibly disclaim any subsequent attack as their words were not an explicit call for violence, and because of the lack of a direct organizational link between the instigator and the perpetrator of the attack. The public figure cannot be prosecuted for his or her statements so long as they do not meet the legal definition of incitement. Oh, so it's a way to call you criminal even though you didn't commit a crime. It's an extrajudicial accusation. We can't say legally that you did something wrong, but we can radicalize our base to call you a terrorist, and then whatever they want to do with you, we're not culpable for it. That sounds inspiring. Anyways, number 3, inspiration. An individual or group without ties to known terrorist groups. You're a stochastic terrorist if you don't have any ties to any terrorist groups, so we see that they're targeting lone wolf attacks. If you're a single individual, your actions will be represented by a single individual that's a popular media figure that will allow them to attack them for your individual actions. Ties to known terrorist groups. Hears the speech and becomes motivated to commit violence against the target of the speech, believing it will further a political or ideological goal. Literally everything the left does is to further a political or ideological goal, which is Chaya's main criticism with Libs of TikTok because they're trying to further political goals through your children. Number 4, attack. An attacker commits an act of terrorism that could include an attacker. Not multiple attackers, a lone wolf, an attacker, commits an act of terrorism that could include physical violence, threats, or other acts meant to harm, instill fear, and intimidate. The victims may receive or fear attacks, online harassment, and death threats.
I got like tons of death threats this week after the entire media machine came after me. So are they responsible for those?
I don't think that there's the same correlation. Are you receiving bomb threats?
Okay, this is where the communist propaganda starts seeping in. This is when you start to see the rules being made and then violated in the same breath. So once your political opposition is actually a victim of stochastic terrorism by receiving death threats, you go, yeah, but they're not bomb threats.
I'm receiving death threats, like, hi, I'm gonna come murder you.
Yeah, and I definitely sympathize with you there, because
Like,
I get those
literally,
every day.
the article goes live, and then I get those threats.
I get the same thing when a Fox News article goes live.
So is the journalist responsible, the journalist who posted the article?
I would say, there's a different responsibility when we're talking about media, and I guess to me, a death threat is different than a violent bomb threat. A death threat, I think we're kind of getting normalized to them, unfortunately, online. We get a lot of them. Probably you and I get them constantly, 24/7.
Oh my god, we're like so quirky. We get like death threats 24/7. Is this the new normal? Where you get death threats all the time? As I just read, that's a property of stochastic terrorism, is getting death threats. This can have a chilling effect, as many victims do not have the resources for adequate security. Number 5, probability. While difficult to predict each individual act of violence due to the disconnected chain of causality, I guess they're not stochastic terrorists, because it's really easy to predict when those riots were gonna happen in the summer of love, baby. The speech makes threats and terror attacks more likely. These attacks, observed as a collection, have a statistically valid relationship, even if individual attacks are too random, stochastic, to predict precisely. So we've identified how stochastic terrorism is an academic term created by the left specifically to target individuals on the right that tell the truth. And this is where it starts to sound a lot like communism, because in 1943,
the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."